Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I hope you are well. I'd like to give you an idea about John Milton, and because this is the last poem we are going to study for this course, I have posted this piece of information: John Milton, his life, his features, and the text of the poem, hoping that you had a look at the poem. Actually, it's an easy poem that connects us with the first course, with what we did with what you did with the first course concerning the sonnets at the beginning of the first course. John Milton, as you see, is one of the people who devised a sonnet form for his own self. But in this case, he is following the Petrarchan sonnet, and you remember the Petrarchan sonnet is a type of poem which is composed of 14 lines. Octave 8 lines, and sestet 6 lines, which rhymes as ABBA, CDE, CDE, and this is the rhyme scheme of sonnets, Milton's Sonnet 19. A brief note about John Donne, who was born 1608, died in 1674. We highlight the type of poetry he writes. His poetry and the prose reflect deep personal convictions, and at the same time a passion for freedom and self-determination at the urgent issues and political turbulence of his day. So most of his poems are characterized with these few features. Milton is almost very famous, or he is very famous poet because of one accomplishment, because of one of his poems, which is Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained, a poem which was composed in 12 books, 12 volumes. This is the length of the poem. It was about over 10,000 lines, and that talks about something universal, about Adam and Eve and the problem of human beings and the role of Satan and the downfall of Adam, and he spoke about these religious issues. As we see from Paradise Lost, that John Milton is a little bit busy or involved with religious issues, and as we're gonna see in his next poem. His sonnet is sometimes entitled on his blindness, and other times it is entitled Sonnet 19. Sonnet 19. In this sonnet, the poet speaks about a kind of a problem that took place for him personally at the mid of his life, when he lost his sight. His sight started to deteriorate, and then at one of the stages of his life, he completely became blind. So this poem revolves in this frame, in this scope or structure. He starts talking about himself, about his capacities, about what he is supposed to do, and what is supposed to be given to him, and his relation with God, and what God would expect from him to do while he is blind. So as you see, he says in the first line, when I consider how my light is spent. How my light is spent means how he became blind, how he started. When I think how I am blind now, before half my days, before I get the mid of my age, and before he gets 50, in this dark and big, huge world. So he starts, let me say, reconsidering his situation, thinking of about the loss of his sight, on what he is, how he's gonna live this kind of situation, and that one talent which is death to hide lodged with me useless. Poets are talented with writing poetry, composing poetry. So he says, when I become blind, of course, in this situation, I cannot write my poetry as such. This talent is useless now. So I'm not able to write any kind of poetry, whether sonnets, whether love poetry, whether poetry that celebrates the duties and the worshipping of God, religious poems. In such a context, he is not able to do his duty as a human being, because no, he's a poet, and of course his duty is to write poetry. So in this context, he cannot write this poetry. And that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless. Lodged with me is inside me, but I cannot use it. Poetry. Though my soul more bent to serve thee with my maker, although that my soul, myself, look forward to serve God, the maker. The capital M refers to God. So he plans, he likes, he intends to worship God, to celebrate his love, the worshipping, the prayers, everything he does in the kind of a sense of poetry. But he cannot in this situation, because he cannot see. He does not have sight. To serve with my maker, in order to serve my God and to present my true account, and to be able to give my account and to present my true account. This is a kind of reference to the judgment day, when people stand in front of God and each one present his record, what he did and what he is supposed to do, lest he returning chide, so he is afraid that God might reproach him. Chide means reproach, yuwabbah. He is concerned about this issue. So he starts thinking about his relationship with God. As far as he lost his sight, he cannot do his duty. He cannot play his role as a human being, as far as he lost his sight. So he is concerned about his future with God, about the kind of relationship between him and God. Will God be satisfied with me? And then he asks himself later a question: does God exact day labor light denied? I fondly ask, but patience. And we can stop here. So in this situation, he starts asking himself, does God exact day labor light denied? Is God expecting me to do something that he expecting from the people who could see? Am I supposed to do something, although I am blind, although I don't have a sight? So this kind of a question, the poet tries to end the first part of his poem, the octave of his poem. These 8 lines are called the octave. So he presented his predicament, his issue, his situation, that he is a man who doesn't have light, and he is supposed to serve his God, but unfortunately he lost his sight, and he is no more able to do his activities like a normal human being. And then he starts questioning his relationship with God. Will God punish him even though he is blind? And later he starts asking that question, with which he finishes the octave of his poem. In this sestet, as you see here, that I fondly ask, but patience to prevent that murmur. You see here the dot ends that long sentence. Here from the very beginning we don't have a full stop, from the beginning until this full stop. With this full stop we have a kind of completion for the first part of the poem. Then we start the second part of the poem, which is the sestet. the second part. But patience, he starts telling himself as if his inner side, his inner self, talks to him, telling him that, well, be patient, Milton. Do not panic, do not be angry, to prevent that inner side, that murmur, your inner thoughts. And the answer comes directly, soon replies. God, the inner side of Milton says, God does not need either man's work or his own gifts. God does not need either man's work or his gifts. Of course, God doesn't need these things. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. The yoke, as we can see, is a kind of bond, a kind of rope that connects two things. So those people who maintain a kind of bond between themselves and God are the best servants for the God. What kind of bond is that? Is the daily activities by which we serve God, like the prayers, the fasting, the vigils. Everything that we do in the service of God represents a bond between the human and God. So he highlights this idea, a kind of religious idea, that those who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. Those are the best people that can serve God in the best way. His estate is kingly, of course. God's estate is kingly, and at the same time, thousands at his bidding speed, and post over land and ocean without rest. Thousands of people move and live their lives and pray for God and do their duties and post over land and everywhere without rest, for over land or over seas or oceans. They also serve who only stand and wait. And only the patient people, only the good people who have connection with God are classified as good people. As you see here, this it's somehow a kind of monologue between man and his self. In the first part, Milton talks about his problem. He has the problem, and his problem is that he lost his sight and he doesn't know how to serve God, because he is not able to see and he is not able to do his duty. So he questions himself, will God punish me even if I don't have sight, that by which I can serve God and do my daily activities and be of service, or God will not punish me? Later in the Sonnet, there is the answer for this problem. The answer is that those people, actually God does not need man and his work, and the best people are those who maintain a kind of connection and relation with God. So as you see, the poem runs in this kind of a frame. It talks about the religiosity of human beings. It's a kind of a moral lesson, a sermon for people to keep a connection, a bond with God, because this is the only way for their rest, for their selves. These are the main issues that John Milton talks about. As I explained earlier, it's a kind of sonnet. We talked about this in the previous course. A Petrarchan sonnet, which is composed of 8 lines in the octave and 6 lines in the sestet. And as you see, the rhyme scheme is A, B, B, A, A, B, B, A, C, D, E, C, D, E. This is the Petrarchan rhyme scheme. Here in this file also we have some notes which I copied that can tell you a little more about the content of the poem. You can have an idea about this if you are interested. If you are not, the explanation I provide here is totally enough, and you can depend on that. I hope that this is helpful, and thank you.